It started in
It's
it.
going.
We're going? We're good?
Recording's going, yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group meeting. For the record, it is 9:05 a.m. We're ready to get started. We've met quorum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so item number 2, public comments. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address this group? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 3. Review and approve the minutes for the meeting held on March 8, 2023.
Dave,
I've got one correction in paragraph 3. It said, second line, Dave Hall called for a vote. That should be Omar Martinez called for a vote. Other than that, I'll make a motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
Levi
Second.
Brian will second.
Levi Brian.
Levi?
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Agenda item number 4, discussion and potential action regarding administrative expenses to be submitted to the Texas Water Development Board for reimbursement. Annette, all yours.
Yes, thank you. As you all can see, here are the expenses for the period from October 2022 to December 2022. We are somewhat behind in billing Water Development Board, but if you all are amenable to approving this request, this is the amount that we'll be submitting for reimbursement. And then also you can see at the bottom what our total year-to-date expenses are since the inception of the program. Are there any questions for me regarding these items? And so this is an action item, and I would ask if anyone would consider making a motion to approve these
Motion to
financial
approve.
requests.
Gilbert,
Gilbert, okay,
you have a second.
I'll second.
okay.
Paul. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate so by saying hi. I'm sorry, hi. By
Hi.
saying.
Aye.
Aye.
Because I missed it. By saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Omar's trying to multitask, folks.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Hearing none, motion passes.
Good thing we're having fun. huh?
Right. Agenda item number 3, digital risk infrastructure program presentation.
Yes, and if you all remember last meeting, I did not give the correct information to Carrie Stevens, Dr. Carrie Stevens for the DRIP program. And so I just wanted to give her an opportunity to speak to you all, just to inform you of what activities they're doing in relation to flood planning, because I think that there are some items that could be related to what we're doing, and for sure the information that they're collecting should be advantageous to the group as we move into our next cycle for flood planning. And so Carrie, if I can pass it over to you, and if you want to talk a little bit about the program that you're operating.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Stevens. I'm from UT Austin. I'm working very closely with Texas A&M on this project and the Institute for Disaster Resilient Texas. I thought that I would just go ahead and show you a few slides because they really do kind of describe our program really well. One of the things we're doing with this program is trying to make sure that when we're working in rural communities that we're not duplicating efforts, but the kind of things that we're doing are supplementing and really kind of filling in gaps in rural communities that have huge data gaps. And so, can y'all see my slides okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, let me move this
Yes,
up.
ma'am.
Awesome, awesome. All right. So our project is funded by the Texas legislature, and we are working together. We're also working with AgriLife and really kind of going into several of our different pilot drip communities. And if you take a look here on the map, you'll notice that we're working with Wise County, which actually has some similarities with Hudspeth County in terms of growth from a large city coming into their county. And then you'll notice that we've talked with and worked with several of the Upper Rio Grande Valley counties, and we're really doing a lot of concentrated work right now with Hudspeth. And so I'll tell you some about that as well. we held a bunch of community meetings last year, really focused in on data gaps and really focused on communities that are having challenges with flooding and don't know what data is out there. And so these were just a few of the pictures of places that we went. We're in phase 2 right now, and I thought I would tell you some details about what we've done with Hudspeth. When we first started meeting with now Judge JoJo, we found out that in a lot of the unincorporated areas, there is growth, incredible growth. As you all know, because I've looked through your flood planning documents, the last time that this was floodplain mapped was 1985. And if you take a look at one of the communities in particular, they had fewer than 150 people living in the community at that time, and now they're up close to 2,000 people. So obviously, huge disparities in terms of when we have the latest data. We did some work with JoJo and with Hudspeth in particular, taking a look at how we could help her visualize the areas in the county that might be at most risk for flooding. And we've continued working with them. One of the things, and you all might be fully aware of this, that is happening in some of those areas is that individuals are taking the flooding into their own hands. You know, the streets are flooding, the arroyos come down from the mountains. There's been incredible growth. And so I think even in the AECOM reports, it talks about the fact that it's very hard to plan around these structures that have been built by people to try to protect their own communities. What we did with all of our pilot communities is we took maps back to the community, and it was county maps as well as watershed maps. And we had conversations about where the water flows, where they're seeing flooding that may not be represented either on FEMA flood hazard areas or even on the flood quilt work that's being done now, and gathered all that community information. So if you take a look at Dell City in particular and Fort Hancock, you're going to very quickly see that Dell City was actually mapped more recently. And so we can tell that a lot of those structures are in flood prone areas. But Fort Hancock they're showing us pictures of flooding that's happening every year, but it sure doesn't show up on any of the flood data sets that we found. By the way, I looked through the report and I saw that I'm going to ask some questions in a minute about the Fathom data set, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And so our next steps are that we're providing the communities back with maps. And let me give you an example of where we found this was really helpful. I'll go ahead and I'll try to close out. I always forget how to do that in Teams. Oh, good, it worked. One of the things that we have found is that a lot of times communities don't have something visual to be able to talk to developers about whenever they're trying to develop. So in one county, we took the maps, we give the maps to the communities. Any data that we find, we make accessible to the communities. The problem, as you all are probably aware, is that a lot of that data requires some sophisticated software to be able to access it. So we're actually working with communities to try to see if there are ways that we can put their data up on a state-funded data repository so that they can get access to things in formats that they need moving forward. So the maps that we brought back, for example, in one county, I had a county commissioner look at it and say, well, and he grabbed the map, he rolled it up under his arm, and he said, I'm going to a meeting with a developer right now, and I'm going to try to use this to convince him to build just a little further over. And so we were a little surprised that maps were so incredibly valuable, but everyone has really appreciated. Commissioners have wanted precinct maps. Everyone's been interested about structures that are showing up that are in flood prone areas. But probably the most shocking thing we found so far is the lack of updated and accurate data for Fort Hancock in particular. So I had spoken at Water for Texas. I had met with Fathom. They told me they had data for everything in the state. Whenever I contacted them specifically about Fort Hancock, I contacted them 3 times and they never got back to us with data. Now, when I look in your planning documents, it looks like there might be some data there. But based on what we're hearing from the community, I think there's even more flooding there than what's showing up on that Fathom data set. So our next step, we have met with Fort Hancock and community leaders, and our thinking is that it would be very helpful for them to be able to document their flooding situation so the county judge can then show some evidence that they're getting flooded, and it's not once every, rare period of time. It's every year, multiple structures are getting flooded. And so we're only starting right now this part of our project where we will work with them, train community members to be able to capture their own images of the flooding that's occurring in their community. And then we're going to help them try to document that. And my hope is that maybe that, along with the limited data that we have in terms of the Fathom data set, and the 85 data is just really almost irrelevant at this point in that community. But we're hoping that maybe that's going to create kind of stronger arguments for getting some support for that community to address some of their flooding issues. So that was kind of my brief overview. Please feel free, ask me questions. We're trying to be very, very transparent with everything that we're doing. We'll share all the information. And we're even going to put a website up for all of the work we're doing with Fort Hancock and allow them to share things. We'll share things back, and that'll all be publicly accessible. So that's our project, y'all.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Let me ask you this. Do you think you would have, you're able to support Hudson County in tapping into flood infrastructure fund dollars with this new and improved data? I understand that not everything that was captured by like Fathom data would apply so that's the data that Texas Water Development Board and the flood planning process has currently available, but you would be able to share this data with the county so that we can support them in building the infrastructure they need.
That would be our hope. We're not getting into, we are literally just focused on trying to get these rural counties access to data that can help them build arguments to be able to go after funding. So, we don't go in and write grants with them or anything like that. We're very focused on finding the data and putting it in a format that they can access to then try to either, in some places they work with their COGs to be able to make this work. In other places, they go out on their own. I even have a few cities that are just doing their own thing and they want access to their own data and they're going after some funding with that data. But our focus is really on trying to help them pull together all this disparate data that they don't know sometimes exists so that they can go after and get some of these funds that they need.
Another follow-up question. Thank you. Another follow-up question. Hudson County will obviously need more data and planning dollars before they're ready to even apply for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is the DRIP program open to like subcontract work to help them get to that point, or is your preference to sort of stay away?
So we're a really small, this is a pilot project right now. We are funded from the legislature, going out, trying to figure out how we fill these gaps. And so it's not like we're trying to necessarily, we're going after additional state funds to try to keep the project going. But I think we're really going to try to stay in our lane, and that is finding this data, helping them get access to it. The other thing I will share is we are working closely with the TDIS system, the Texas Disaster Information System that's being stood up for all disaster data in the state of Texas. And we'll have a place on their website where community members can go in and access, whoever in the community needs access to that data can get access to that data. And not always just in the formats that we deal with in terms of needing ArcGIS and modeling. That's not, we're finding that's not at all what they need. They need data in a different format.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any further questions?
We've also met with Presidio County with, and I apologize, I always get my two double men's names, Jeff Davis or Jim Wells.
It's Jeff.
The other one that's beautiful up there.
Jeff
We've met
Davis,
with
yes.
Jeff Davis, sorry. I have a mental block against that. I'm working with both those counties and it's hard. And we're giving them some maps and as we met with the various counties, I think that they have found it very helpful to, Peggy's been at all those meetings and to really start to understand the watershed contributions to their flooding issues that they're having in the communities. Because even if we take a look at the data that's in the flood planning documents that y'all have, I think you know that flooding is way underreported. We can't find enough data to really support the level of flooding that's actually happening out there.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And then in our region, because flooding happens so rarely, but it does happen, it's really hard for us to quantify damages. Most people just fix it because they know it's not going to happen often enough. So
Yeah.
we're having the challenge on being able to make arguments like with FEMA dollars. Very hard to access those because they have a very particular benefit cost process. So we're hoping that your data helps these smaller communities. And if we're struggling in El Paso with this, I can just imagine how small communities are struggling.
Yeah, in some of so in Fort Hancock, and there's a new division that has started up that I just toured when I was out there last week, Desert Haven, which is also growing very rapidly in Hudspeth County. They both, especially Fort Hancock, is flooding almost every single year. So this is not a rare thing for them, but they're dealing with a lot of issues around maybe they don't own their homes. Maybe they can't prove to FEMA home ownership. Therefore, they can't get any funding to help them. Literally, I have word for word out of one person's mouth. I just opened my front door and I open my back door and I let the arroyo go through. And when we're finished, we clean it up. And it happens almost every year.
That's insane.
Normalized. I mean, it just gets normalized is what I'm seeing throughout the whole state. So please, I do have one clarifying question in the flood planning documents. It looks like the updated number of structures that are either in the 1% or 2% are in Fort Hancock in particular. It seems like that's coming from the Fathom data set. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
Okay. And so that is definitely including some of the runoff related issues that they're seeing because it's not riverine flooding. It's a lot of runoff predominantly there, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's what we've seen too. We can't find any better data than that. And so our next steps with them are literally to help them create a community documentation system where they can document that flooding is happening on a regular basis.
That's awesome. First of all, thank you for what you're doing for these small communities. Annette, is it possible to add an extension of what they're doing onto our website? Meaning Then we add it as part of the flood planning process. Might be a little too late to add it to the plan, but hopefully next cycle we'll be sure to add your work. But in the interim, if we can add it to the
Okay.
website and find ways to keep collaborating, please count on us. We're
Okay.
at least I'm a chronic volunteer, so if there's anything that we can help
Yeah.
you with. Sometimes, fly a drone near an area that you're targeting or visiting with people, please rely on us. Let Annette
Okay.
know, and then we'll find a way to make it happen if you need additional boots on the ground.
So that sounds wonderful. Just so y'all know, I could probably, I never can find the chat on this format either, but if you Google IDRT, Institute for Disaster Resilient Texas, and then DRIP, DRIP, our website will come up, and we actually have some small blog posts in terms of the different communities we're working with. And that's where we'll be adding more and more of that information. And I would love to keep in touch. I regularly travel with a hydrologist who really does a lot of pretty elaborate modeling. And longer term, if we get some additional funding, we're looking to try to help some of these rural communities get some better updated data and do some additional modeling for them. But we're not at all to that size at this point.
Whatever you need, letters of support, maybe a little bit of local funding, a place to stay, some food, you just let us know. We're here for you.
I tell you, I've had a lot of fun coming out there. I'm from North Central Texas, on the Clear Fork of the Brazos River, so a different part of the state. But I've been back and forth to El Paso and Upper Rio Grande Valley area now for about 7 or 8 times this last year. And boy, I tell you, I've honestly fallen in love with the part of the state that I feel like Austin and the area where I live often ignores. Y'all have a different vocabulary. You talk about monsoon season. I can't find that anywhere else in the state. And so, I mean, the needs of your area are unique. And I think and you're committed to really try to solve problems, which is very exciting to see groups do.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay.
Y'all can
Well-
feel free to reach out if there's anything we can ever do to help, and we'll try to keep you in the loop as our projects continue.
Thank you. Looking forward.
Thank
to it.
you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 6, updates from Richard Biggins. I will say I'm gonna hand over the chair position to Mr. Hall because I gotta step out for a quick call. And so during this item, if you'll take over, sir. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Dave, for monitoring me. This is Richard Bagans from the Water Development Board. A couple updates. So the ranking all of the FMSs, FMEs, and FMPs within the state flood plan that was put out for public comment in early March. It was originally deadline for public feedback on April 1st. That deadline for everybody was extended to this Friday, April 14th. So if anybody has any remaining feedback on the ranking process for the state flood plan, please submit it. It's on our website. We sent out email blasts. If you didn't, let me know and I can forward it to you. But please submit using that online Microsoft Forms link that's on all of those websites and the email blast. Reminder that it is legislatively mandated that we do have to rank the projects, and so getting your input on our proposed methods and figuring out the best way to do it this first cycle. With that, on the ranking, we held a webinar for all of the RFPG stakeholders, for all the tech consultants, voting members, chairs, sponsors, on March 22nd. Largely Q&A session, but that meeting was also recorded, and the just overview slides are also posted to the state flood plan webpage as well. On more tasks, so the final adopted our plan that you all submitted in January was TWDB reviewed it and found data discrepancies across all regions. So all regions got a request to resubmit some corrections. We sent that to our consultants and they submitted it to us yesterday. So that is under review. So that is back on TWDB's plate to review as you guys work towards the amended plan. Let me look at my other list. That is all of my major updates. Does anybody have any specific flood planning questions for me at this time? If not, I do have a personal update. I was recently admitted to Texas Macomb's MBA program for full time. So I'll be leaving the water board in June. So I think I'll have 1 or 2 more meetings with you all. I don't know my replacement yet, but I just want to say thank you for my time here. I've enjoyed being part of this process and thank you all for all of your effort too. I think what we're doing has been really cool and hopefully it will continue to be beneficial to the state in the future. So thank you all, but I'll be peacing out.
Well, Richard,
Congratulations,
thanks
Richard.
from our side too. You've done a great job.
Best of luck to you, buddy.
Thank you. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Dave.
Gilbert, are you up on the
Yes.
call?
Yes, sir, I am.
Hey, can you comment at all at this point on the feedback that you guys provided by 1 April?
I'm trying to look back at that. And I know we met with the team and all that. I just don't know if we submitted it in time, but we've got till Friday to submit on there, Dave. So we'll go ahead and put our comments together. I know our team met together and we did discuss it. So we can share it with you guys before we submit to TWDB.
Okay, either that or just give us we trust you, so just give us a good brief, maybe at the next meeting.
Yes, sir, we'll do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Richard. Again, we really appreciate what you've done for the program. Good luck in your MBA.
Thank you. We'll see where I end up afterwards. I may be still in the water industry, so we'll see.
Well, all right. Well, good luck. What's the MBA study in?
For the Masters of Business Administration, but my plan is to move a little bit over into the climate space, but we'll probably still be water related within that.
Okay, well, good luck. Okay, thanks, Richard. Let's move on to the RFP updates from AECom.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Travis, do you want to go ahead and share your screen? Morning, Dave, Annette, Omar, the rest of the regional flood planning group and guests. I'm Gilbert Andujo with AECom. Today we have on the call with us several members of AECom. They're going to help us go through this presentation. We've got Steve Ainsa, we've got Travis Brand, got Jeff Irvin, we have Clinton Kimball, Alejandra Marco, Monish Nayal, and Sabine Shrestha. With that being said, we're going to go ahead, next slide. We're going to go ahead and cover general RFP updates and continue talking about the identified FMEs and FMPs. These are the general updates up here. And like Richard had mentioned, we did have some comments and little discrepancies on there that we had to address on the original flood plan. We did go ahead and address those and resubmitted the entire plan on Monday, April 10th. So that's back in their hands, and hopefully we can get that declared administratively complete, or however you want to call it. So just to cover the other the upcoming dates, again, we have another meeting on May 9th. We are planning to submit a draft amendment to the group on May 26th. We're seeking another meeting on June 5th. We will discuss the amended RFP document then. We are giving the group up until June 9th to be able to provide comments to us. And then from there, we'll post an agenda for approval for the amended RFP, somewhere along the lines of June 16th. So we'll have a general meeting on June 19th. We'll discuss the comments from the RFP and then request approval from the group on June 29th or 30th. And with that being said, we'll submit our amended RFP plan to the Water Development Board by July 14th. So if anybody has any questions on those dates right now. All righty, well, thank you guys. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff Urban, who is going to cover the identified FMEs and FMPs up to date.
I'm sorry, Gilbert, real quick. I had Dave on mute. You want to go ahead?
The week of June 5th, be a little tight. We've got an 8 June water planning meeting in Van Horn, so we'll have to take that into account when we plan for the week of 5 June.
Okay, I guess, can we send out a little notice to everybody, Annette,
Okay.
to see when
Yes,
they'd
sir.
be available, when the best time?
Yes, I will do that.
For the 5 June week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
week of 5 June, and then we'll take that into consideration, Dave. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
But with that being said, if nobody has any other questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jeff Urban. Jeff, you on?
Go on to the next slide. Next slide. So task 12 is to, as you all are aware from all our past meetings, we're basically trying to get FMPs defined for selected priority communities that we selected back last year to have FMEs converted into FMPs. And can we go back to the previous slide, please? And we ended up having a short list of 6 different potential FMPs that we would generate. One for the city, Gateway Ponds, one for the city of El Paso, one for the El Paso County. That was VIN 1, which we'll discuss. And then a project for the city of Pecos, the city of Alpine, and the city of Kermit. City of Kermit didn't show any interest, so we've moved on and we've had a meeting with the city of Presidio, and we're moving forward with the city of Presidio. Just as a kind of overall status, we had put together an internal schedule for completing all the documentation needed for FMPs for these projects by the end of April, and we're basically on track for each one of these, with the exception of the city of Alpine, and I'll discuss that when we get to that particular part of this status. So now we're going to go through these one by one, and we'll start off with Gateway Ponds. Go on to the next slide. So what we're seeing on the left-hand side of this slide, this is a slide you've seen before, but this is central El Paso and a series of projects that were in the Stormwater Master Plan from 2010 that's now been updated in 2022. And the project on the right is the project that's in the current plan that we're adding in as an FMP into the regional flood plan. And it involves basically trying to solve the flooding that occurs in central El Paso around the Gateway area, where in extreme floods, the water overtops the interstate. So let's look at the, we've now completed for this FMP, we've completed the detailed modeling of the existing flooding, and we've gone through and developed concepts that can be employed to try to prevent the extreme 100-year flooding that we're seeing at the Gateway. Can we see the 100-year flood extents? Sabine, can you take control and display that?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Can you see the screen?
What's up? And then it went away.
Not yet.
It popped up and then went away. Oh, it's coming. It's tried.
Is it coming?
There it is. It's
Here
up.
it is. All right. Okay. So what we're seeing in the 100-year flood and what we're showing here is the gateway pond that's on the north side of Island, which you see running through the middle of this figure. And then we have the water the volume of water that's coming in from the central area is more than that current pond can handle in the 100-year storm. And so it ponds up against the interstate and ponds up a whole series of blocks on the north side of the interstate. And then it
Hey, Jeff, sorry
then it comes
to interrupt
across.
you, Jeff.
Yeah.
But I don't know if everybody's seeing the image. I mean, I've got an image that comes in and out. So is everybody else having problems?
We see half of it.
Yeah,
We see the important part. We can see it. There it is.
there it is now.
I think it's just slow
All
loading.
right, I'll start off again. All right, so what we're seeing here through the middle of the picture, middle of this figure, is we're seeing IH10, and we're seeing the two ponds that have been constructed, the blue rectangles. Those two ponds exist, and when the 100-year flood comes in, those ponds help substantially, but the 100-year flood is too big to be contained by the current volume of those two ponds. And so what happens is the pond north of the interstate fills up with water, backs up against the interstate, and floods a whole series of blocks to the north of the interstate. And as the water rises north of the interstate, it eventually gets relieved by flowing down Rayner Street and going south of the interstate, where it contributes and is really the major source for that flooding in that area downstream of the interstate and north of the railroad. So in order to relieve this flooding, Sabine, can you go to the next slide? And we have on the call, we have Steve Ainsa, who's the engineer who's developing the solutions of this. And if anybody has any questions about this, we can ask him. So I can't see your second figure, Sabine.
Right now, it's half an image on my side over here. You can see the important stuff, but the bottom half you can't.
This is
Looks like there's an enlargement of the ponding area on the north side of the freeway.
Right.
Yes.
So I can't see the figure, so I'm going to be talking from memory. But basically, that enlargement on the north side of the interstate is not location specific. That's just what we used in the modeling. So there's no plan put the storage in this particular location, but that amount of storage is what's needed in order to prevent the flooding over the interstate in the 50-year flood. So if we basically triple the storage within the watershed, and again, it doesn't have to be where that existing pond is. It could be anywhere in the vicinity, or we could even find selected areas further up in the watershed. But we need a lot more storage north of the interstate in order to basically keep the water from getting out of the storage and coming around Rayner and flooding the area south of the interstate. So the first step would be to basically provide the large storage volume that's needed north of the interstate, and that would solve what's basically the 50-year flood, or the 2% annual chance flood. Then, in order to get the 1% annual chance flood solved, we would have to add in an additional force main. And if we add that additional force main down to the river, will be able to basically contain the flooding on both sides of the interstate. So this picture we're looking at, Sabine, what's the return period with this and the conditions?
This is now
Jeff,
100 years.
is forcing pumping?
Okay, this is with the force main. Okay, can everybody see that?
Now it's clear on my end, so.
All
Yeah.
right, so now if we add the storage and add the force mains, then we basically solve the problem. But this is going to be a very expensive project. And so it certainly is a valid project for the attention of the state, because it basically keeps open the interstate through the state. Otherwise, the interstate's going to get blocked in the 100-year flood. So it's going to have some substantial benefits, although it's going to have a very high price. Anybody have any questions on this one?
I just wondered, is forcing pumping?
Yes.
Force main includes a new pump station. Yes, force main would have a pump station in that northern pond, and it would deliver water directly to the river.
Okay, what is the green thing that goes across the interstate west of the two ponding areas?
That is flooding that's going, I think that's down Piedras.
That's the
That
rain.
is, I'm sorry,
That's Rainer. Yeah, that's correct. It's storm flow
That's
that's
Rainer,
moving
right.
across the interstate, but under the overpass. So it's not flooding I-10.
it's not flooding I-10.
Oh,
It's
okay.
going under the interstate, and it's a very small amount of water, and so as a result, you're not seeing it causing the flooding of that whole area north of the railroad, like we saw in the 100-year.
Have you made any estimates on the impact to buildings on the north side?
We haven't at this point. This is basically a general concept, so we can get a cost and get a benefit. The benefit is going to be that we're preventing all that flooding we saw in the first map, and the cost is going to be associated with the force main and the expansion of the storage and the procurement of the property. But it's not specific. This is not the location of the storage, I want to stress, is not determined at this location. What's happening concurrent with our plan is TxDOT is going through a redesign of this whole reach of the interstate. So TxDOT is currently planning what they're going to do all through El Paso along IH-10, and it's not entirely clear what TxDOT's going to do and what the city's going to do in tandem with TxDOT. That's all in flux. But we're getting this project into the plan so that there's a defined FMP that can be eligible for flood infrastructure funding should the state come up with that in the next 5 years prior to the next plan.
Okay,
Jeff,
thanks for the response.
my only question is that did the model consider, I believe the El Paso Water is have done some improvements to Moorhead, Memphis. We started construction on Tremont, which is all part of that central dams. And then there's a pond downstream of Moorhead that's being, they already acquired.
I'm sorry, that's breaking up. I can't quite.
Yeah, if
Would
that,
you mind repeating that, Morgan?
I didn't.
sure. Let me see, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the El Paso Water has been doing some improvements to the dams upstream there in the central area to
Yeah.
Moorhead, Tremont.
Yes.
And then there's a pond downstream of Moorhead. Has all that been considered as part of the modeling?
Yeah, the modeling includes the existing dams that are there. And like I said, the storage that we need to control the water from going across the interstate can come from anywhere within the watershed, right? So if we can expand the existing flood pools for upstream dams, that would help mitigate the amount of storage that we need. So there are more alternatives than what we're showing here. And eventually, once it's clear what TxDOT is doing to basically control the flow that they're going to be generating as part of their project, then we can go ahead and get more details into the various components of this particular project.
Yeah, and the El
But
Paso
yes, the modeling that we're doing does include the existing dams. Yeah.
But yeah, those dams are right now they're being modified. We're expanding the capacity of those dams substantially. So they're being constructed. There's a lot of improvements that are being constructed right now that it have expanded the capacity of those dams.
Right. Those dams alone, we've looked at it enough to know that expanding the capacity at those dams within the limits that you can expand them is not going to solve this problem, because the major part of this issue is coming from the urban area that's downstream of those dams. Those dams are catching water from the Franklins. And it's the part of the watershed that's in the center of the city, that's the paved center of the city that's coming down to the interstate without the tension that's causing this issue.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So basically, you're not taking in consideration the new projects that are already being dealt with, because that's what he's trying to point out, is that is our plan the old plan without considering all of the new projects that they're doing to hold and try to alleviate the water? Because we should take into consideration, regardless of where the water comes, because we know where the water comes, period. What he's trying to address is, are we considering what they are already doing before we started this plan? So that's just the question he's asking, is, are we considering when we started this plan, they already started some projects? That's what he wants to know. And that's what I would like to know as well, is we started this plan, they started projects right after. Are we considering those projects in this plan? That's it.
So the important thing here, and we just back up. The important thing here in this plan is that we include within this plan an estimate of what would be needed in order to reduce the flood risk that we've defined using an existing model. And the existing model includes the conditions as it was when we did the modeling for the project, which was before the completion of the projects that you're talking about. But the important thing is that we put in the project, in the plan, we put a flood mitigation project in there that addresses the existing risk. Now, the existing risk, what we're putting within the plan, this FMP, as I explained at the beginning, this FMP is not the final solution to address that risk. This is a project that will address that risk, but clearly, at some point in the future, we will have to submit for a flood for a grant under a future state flood infrastructure fund to resolve the problem. When we do that, we will because we have this plan within our plan, we will be able to put in a grant application for the state. At that time, when the flood infrastructure fund comes out, we will be able to redefine the FMP to include the information that's current at the time of that grant application. And at the time of that grant application, we can alter the concept and the cost meeting this under this same FMP designation to basically address the concerns that you're having about dealing with changes that the city has made to that storage. So this is yeah.
So to address Mr. Gomez's question is, no, we haven't considered it because we already started the process before they started the project. Because regardless of whether they did or not, we already started our own process in which when we apply for grants and all of the good stuff, then that will tackle the projects that were added to this, and therefore the budget will change when
Correct.
we address. Okay, that's all. That's all. Just to
think
clarify.
And just to add on that, the sponsors of these projects, we do have, you know, continuous meetings with them to discuss the plan that we're submitting for them. So we've got complete buy-in from the sponsors themselves. In this case, it's TP Water, and we do have basically weekly meetings with them to keep them up to date on what we're doing. So everybody is aware of that. So, but thanks, Jeff, for your explanation.
And those are good questions. And clearly, whenever this thing is finally designed, it's going to include a whole bunch of change conditions based upon TxDOT, based upon the upstream dams. So it's going to need to be refined, but it needs to be in the plan because of the nature of the risk that exists. Can I go on to the next project?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions on this one? Okay, the next project is the project for the county, which is VIN 1, and I'm going to pass it off to Clint Kimball, who's leading that particular project.
All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background on this one because I think it's been a while since we talked about it. People might have forgotten. This project was originally conceived as part of the County Stormwater Master Plan developed in 2010 as a pair of dams, essentially, proposed to solve a myriad of flood risk issues that are known in the village of Vinton. When these were included in the Stormwater Master Plan update in 2021, a bunch of modeling was done, and it was estimated that around 100 homes in Vinton would receive benefits, reduced flood risk as a result of these two dams. So it ranked very highly in the priority of the county, which is why it's being studied now. But that 2021 update, which updated the costs because costs definitely increased between 2010 and 2021. The concept of this detention was not changed. It remained as two dams, slightly bigger than they were before because of Atlas 14, but still dams. So over the past couple of months, we've reevaluated these and reconceived them as basins at the recommendation of the county, essentially turning them from dams into holes in the ground. It's a lot more excavation to do it that way. It's more expensive, but it's easier to permit, easier to maintain, and people just feel more comfortable with holes in the ground rather than dams. So we looked at that. The cost estimate in 2010 was around 21 million. In 2021, it went up to 29 million. And again, that's for engineering, design, and construction of both dams. To 29 million in 2021. Now that we've reconceived them as basins, we've turned these into rectangular shaped basins, and the cost estimate has gone up to 38 million. So that is what we plan to include in this update. We've updated the modeling per the state standards. We're looking at the 500-year event now as well. The benefit cost ratio is pretty low here because unfortunately the value of the real estate, even though there's 100 houses, pretty low, but it's still a high priority due to the number of people who would receive benefit here. So that 100 residences are those who would receive benefits in the 100-year event. And now that we're looking at the 500-year event, there's a lot more. Unfortunately, I don't have the number offhand. I don't want to get myself trapped by putting out a number and having it be wrong. But the benefits are definitely increasing in addition to the cost. So that's, go ahead.
Is there any benefit to availability of water for water supply as a result of these that we could add into this agenda?
In theory, I think you would have a hard time actually retaining water up here. It's very high above the water table. It depends on the soils that would have to be investigated, whether or not that was a possibility or not. But as of now, we're not considering that as a possibility.
I was just thinking about the possibility of different funds available as a result of that, if we could use that as part of the justification.
There's water in these arroyos so infrequently here. I think that would be a difficult argument to make, unfortunately.
Okay.
So are you
Thanks, Clint.
finished, Clint?
Yes, that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions. I guess we could look at the floodplains here. Yeah, I believe we showed these at the last meeting, but you can see the proposed 1% annual chance floodplain, and in the previous slide, it had the existing without the two basins. So you can just see visually there's a lot of benefits there. And that's all I have.
Let's go on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide.
Apologies, the PowerPoint is a little slow here.
Okay, so City of Pecos. So can everybody see the map of the City of Pecos?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the City of Pecos has a very large watershed with an arroyo that's located to the west of the city, and it's located some distance away from the Pecos River on the east side of the city. The flooding that we're addressing as part of the FMP for the City of Pecos is not associated with the Pecos River on the east side, but it's from the flows that are coming from that large arroyo on the west side. And you can see as the flow comes from the west side, it splits off into two major fingers, one that goes north of the city and one that goes south of the city. And there's a branch of the northern split that goes right down through the center of the city. And that's the one that's the one that was the major source of discussion when we had a meeting with the City of Pecos during the last month. Monish, can you pull up the picture with the issues of concern to the City of Pecos?
Sure. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So basically, at each one of these lettered locations, there are areas where the City of Pecos, we had a meeting with their senior staff in the city, and these are the areas that they said that were the ones that caused them the biggest headaches. And you can see that, and in the discussions with them, the ones they were worried about the most were the flooding along D and E through the center part of the city. And as I hinted before, that's associated with this finger of the arroyo that comes out of the main arroyo and goes through town in very large floods. And that finger of flow addresses the area of flooding at F, D, and E, and also it continues on and gets another one of their areas of C. So what we've been discussing with the city of Pecos to do is to locate detention in the vicinity of where you see the F box there, which is city property, to basically put detention in that location that handles the overflow from the arroyo that heads in that direction and basically prevents the flooding that we're seeing going through the city there. And so we're currently in the concept design of that particular basin, and we'll have another meeting with the city to confirm that they like what we come up with, and we should still be able to get this FMP completed by the end of the month. Anybody have any questions with City of Pecos? If not, let's go on to the next one, which is City of Alpine. So is Jeff Bennett on the call? I didn't see him in the list.
He's not on the call. Philip Boyd was sitting in for him.
So we've had a couple of meetings with the City of Pecos, and basically, as you can see on the flood map that's generated by this approximate modeling for the state, the Fathom modeling, that the City of Pecos is skeptical that this amount of flooding is a true depiction of the risk to flooding for the city of Alpine, because they haven't seen this level of flooding. And we've gone back. So at the last meeting that we had with the city of Pecos, let's go on to the next slide. And the next slide. So these are the areas, these areas you see in A, B, C, D, all the way up to G. These are areas that have been brought up by either the city of Alpine or by discussions we had with Jeff Bennett and his colleagues in the city. And the city was skeptical that the 100-year floodplain was a true representation of the risk. So we did not propose solutions to a risk that they weren't convinced that it could occur. So what we've done is we've gone back, and this is why the city of Alpine is behind schedule, is we're trying to take care of the city of Alpine's concerns and make sure that when we do an FMP, if we do one, that it addresses an issue that they are in fact on board with. So we've gone back through the rainfall records to see if we have any recent rainfall events which we could use as a test to whether these maps are accurate or not. And we found several events back, and can you go on to the next slide? I'm not going to go through this table, but we looked at all the different historical storms. Go on to the next slide. We extracted data from the different gauges and to try to identify where we had data for sufficient data to be able to model an historic storm. And what we found was that we had pretty good data for an event that occurred last August 16th in the city of Alpine. And we found 5 gauges in and around the city of Alpine, either weather underground or NOAA gauges that showed rainfall in excess of 3 to 3.5 inches, which would have been like a 25-year flood for the city of Alpine. So we were convinced that this, in fact, was a confirmed extreme event last August. And we've gone through and taken that rainfall and modeled it through the city. And this is what the extent of the flooding looks like using that rainfall. Monique, will you show that map?
Yes.
So you can see that that if we take that amount of rainfall that occurred last August, and again confirmed by several gauges on the north and the south part of the city, that there should have been, per the modeling that's been done by the state and standard hydrologic methods, there should have been a memorable flood through the center of Alpine that flooded a whole series of buildings through the center of Alpine. But in discussions with the city, and they were all obviously there in August of last year, their flooding was nowhere near at this extent. And this is a 25-year rain event per the statistics. So we're going to go back and have a meeting with the city of Alpine, and we're going to ratchet back our loss rates for the watershed and try to come up with an estimate for the 25-year flood that matches what their experience was, and then we'll apply the 100-year rainfall and see what happens. And then there may or may not be a city project to address that revised 100-year flood. So we're still in progress with City of Alpine. It's going to be nip and tuck on whether we get Alpine done within 2 weeks, but we're hopeful. Anybody have any questions on what we're up to in City of Alpine, trying to help them out? Okay, on to the last one, on to Presidio. So this is the map of the flooding in the city of Presidio. This is the mapping that's done by the Fathom modeling. Again, this flood quilt that was developed by the state using approximate modeling. And the flooding that you're seeing on the northwest side of the city, that's because of their particular modeling didn't address the levees that are on that side of the city. So that flooding is not a real depiction of what the flood risk is on that side of the city. And but we had a meeting with the city of Presidio with, again, their staff that's experienced with their local flooding. And they provided to us a master plan that depicted where they've had concepts of where to put detention to solve their flood problems. Can we go on to the next slide with the ABCD for the Presidio, Monish? So these areas that we have shown in A, B, C, and D are the areas where the city of Presidio said they have their priority flood problems, and it pretty much works according to the orders of the letter. So their primary concern was along that along the arroyo that's that's associated with the A rectangle and then all the way down to the river from that location. So in discussing which one of these 4 areas they wanted to fix, they wanted to fix the flooding in area A. And they already had a master plan in the city which addressed that issue with a very basic concept of what to do. And can you pull up that map, Monique, the map from the master plan? So what they have in that map is they have a series on this center section. Can you all see my arrow going up and down?
Yes.
Can somebody give me control? Well, if you see the blue line through the center of town there, there's a blue rectangle. There it is. So you can see where I'm pointing now. That's one of the detentions which they wanted to have built to uh-oh. Can anybody still see the map? Because I can't.
It's up.
Coming out now.
All right, well, in the area where I can't see the map anymore, but okay, now I can. So there's a series of fingers which of streamlines that lead into the center part of the city. And their concept design for their master plan included 3 different small ponds that controlled the flow going into that part of the city. There's another streamline over in this part of the watershed here that should also be controlled to solve the flooding down in here. So we're putting together a concept for them for a series of small stormwater ponds, which we will include as an FMP for the city of Presidio. And that should get them their FMP into the regional flood plan. And we think we can get those sized and costed up by the end of next week. So I think we're going to be able to take care of everybody, whether we can agree with the city of Alpine and what they need by the end of next week. We expect on May 9th to be able to have all these FMPs completed. I think with Alpine, it's up in the air. It may not be a project. It may end up being writing up what we did and cutting the price of the FME that they have in the plan to show that we've already done a lot of the work that was in the FME that's been proposed for the city, so that the city can still propose for the FME, but we can take credit for the work that's been done for them by the regional flood planning group. Anybody have any questions? That's the status of where we are on task 12.
Jeff, I will get back with Alpine and let them know the deadline to make sure that they make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, and we just completed the run of using the historic event from August 16th. We just got that done yesterday. So it's not, and that was our commitment to Alpine at that meeting. So we've just now done our bit. So yeah, I think it should be conveyed to the city of Alpine that we can meet with them as soon as they're able, and we can talk. So I would like to talk to them this week. If not, the beginning of next week would be helpful. Can you try to set that up, or do you want us to try to set that up?
I will do that. I will.
All right.
I will have a discussion.
All right. Back to you, Gilbert.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. That being said, that entails our AECOM presentation today to cover the work we're doing right now. So if anybody has any other questions, right now is the time we can entertain them. If not, Annette, we'll turn it back over to you all. Or Dave.
Gilbert and Richard, yeah, Omar's still out in another meeting. I saw the word normalization recently in a lot of notes, and I guess I'm asking either Gilbert or Richard to tell me what the potential impact of normalization is going to be on this water planning or this regional flood planning group, you know, and the inputs that we put in. What's it going to do to us? I don't know necessarily what it means. I can look it up and Google it, but what's it mean in relation to us?
For ranking the FMEs, FMSs, and FMPs within the state flood plan, the current proposed method is to select certain criteria, such as the number of residential structures removed or the number of low water crossings. There's several criteria. In each of those criteria, you take the highest value of any project across the state, and then you scale all the other projects based on that highest value, essentially saying that highest value is worth at like 100, let's say, and scaling all the other projects between 0 and 100 based on the highest value provided in that criteria.
Is there a potential that normalization will have an adverse effect on the work that we're doing in this region?
I don't know enough to comment on that. Other than stating that the let's say the number of structures removed, maybe Region 14 has a project that removes a lot of structures. And so maybe that they're at the top of the ranking for that particular criteria and they set the standard. But comparing to other projects around the entire state, some other projects may set the standard or they move essentially what you would consider like a goalpost of what projects could be expected to improve the flood risk.
Gilbert, is it possible for us to give some feedback on what you anticipate normalization will do to the Region E inputs?
Region
Or to
14.
the flood planning group, the Upper Rio Grande, I'm sorry. This is not. Is it possible for you to give us some feedback on that on maybe the next meeting, Gilbert?
I think that's something, Jeff, I don't know, I think we could look at and overall try and provide some feedback for you all.
Yeah, I think I'm not enough familiar with the issue to know, have they chosen specifically which indices are going to be used for normalizing? Has that been proposed at some point where we can look at and see which ones they're going to use?
There are Excel workbooks posted on the state flood planning webpage with examples of what it would look like in terms of each criteria, which criteria, what the maximum across the state would look like, and normalizing that for the projects in all regions. So that is available to see what it can look like. That is the current proposed method. Again, we are seeking feedback on that method, especially in terms of which criteria to be used and how much each criteria should be weighted in terms of should it be weighted more or less.
And I'm sorry, again, my ignorance here. When do you require the comments from the plan, from the region on that?
Friday was the extended due date.
So that was part of the feedback that was intended, that was extended to this Friday.
Yes, David.
It sounds to me like there needs to be somebody to look at that and just make sure we don't have some comments that we need to provide in feedback in relation to normalization criteria.
So if we came up with comments, how do we get the regional flood planning group to endorse comments that we look at the criteria and make some quick checks and run it through the regional flood planning group? Do we just send it to Annette and somehow we get it approved for sending on to the state on Friday?
And
We could, that's,
I don't have any problem with that. It's a very short suspense. It appears that, but I am concerned about that term normalization and the criteria that are going to be used and the feedback to that criteria. If we're going to have some adverse effects on things that are within this Upper Rio Grande input, then I think we need to provide a good feedback and let people know about it. Is anybody hearing me?
Yeah. So,
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
so we're definitely hearing you, and I'm just I'm trying to figure out how we can do this. I think the simplest thing at this point is that Gilbert, you basically hold a meeting of our staff and we see what we could do for generating comments. I mean, I can see off the top of my head that if they use the most houses at risk in a 100-year event between East Texas, which has hurricanes, and El Paso, which doesn't, that all those regions that are along the coast are going to have certainly the higher normalization. It also depends how they define the normalization, how they do it. So, whether there should be some I can see lots of issues to bring up, but I just don't want us to be.
Well, you're talking the same feeling that I have, and I just hope that whatever normalization does, it doesn't prioritize everything or rate everything totally away from West Texas. So that's all I'm trying to say. I agree with you guys providing input and maybe turning it in and then giving us some feedback on May 9th as to what was provided and what kind of response we got from the Water Development Board.
So I think, Gilbert, we need to have a get together this afternoon with
Already
you,
got one
me.
scheduled.
Yeah, schedule, include Travis, include Clint.
Right. We've already
And
got
let's-
it already scheduled. We got one this afternoon.
And you guys have
And then
access to that file that Richard referenced that tells you what the criteria are?
Yes, sir, we do. We have them.
And
Okay.
we were on that meeting where they discussed. We were on that meeting where they discussed how they were prioritizing. So we're aware of it. I just didn't, for some reason, the normalization issue didn't raise a red flag with me. What I was tracking in that meeting was the effect of the cost benefit. But it turns out the cost benefit term really has a very minor effect on the scoring. So the thing that I was concerned about affecting the region, I lost my concern for it. But we'll look into the normalization issue and get back to you.
Okay, well, then we'll look forward to some feedback then on the May 9th meeting as to what happened.
Yes, sir, will do.
Okay, thanks, Gilbert. Thanks, Richard, for your explanation. Okay, the next item up is next general meeting on May 9th, and I mentioned that already. We have it, I assume that's at 9 to 11.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 9 to 11, and then there's gonna be a, what do you call it, doodle poll?
For June, yes.
For June, the week of June 5th, that'll come out to everybody, so we can kind of select a good date for June 5th also. Okay,
Perfect timing. Omar just walks in. I think he was waiting.
he came back right at the end.
Sorry.
Okay, is there any other comments from anybody that's up on the call that they'd like to make right now?
Just FYI, the week of June 5th may be hard for me to attend. I'm getting married that week. So
Oh, look at you.
Congrats.
if
Congratulations.
it, thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you. If it's early in the week, I can make it. If it's later in the week, let's not get me in trouble. Right
I
off
was
the
gonna say,
bat,
if you want to
please.
start off the wedding right, then don't be at the meeting on June, the week of June 5th.
Just make sure we have somebody to cover for you, Levi.
Okay, yeah, and like Monday through Wednesday'd probably be fine. If it's like a Thursday or Friday, I'm probably not available.
No, no,
Then you shouldn't be.
yeah, you should not. Yes.
All right, any further comments? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn then?
So move.
Second,
Levi second, okay.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. See you all on the 9th.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Appreciate
day.
it.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Is it May 9th, the next week? Sure, it's in my calendar.
Yeah, I think we sent it out.
Yeah, but I have two calendars.